Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. We are here to help you understand the unique cultural needs of Gen Z and Generation Alpha. I'm your host, Chuck Peters, and I'm so glad you're here today. This is the Etch Next Gen Ministry Podcast. There's more to team building than having your whole team stand on a stump or go on a retreat. Team building is something that we need to do every day as we engage with our teams in weekly meetings and daily interactions, as we cast vision and clarify expectations for them, as we invest in communication. We're going to be talking about team building today with my guest, Lee Hotchkiss. Lee is a pastor, missionary, speaker, author, trainer, and he also happens to be my father-in-law. Lee brings a great wealth of knowledge in team building as he has taught this and led workshops on team building around the world with missionaries in the field and with church ministry leaders as well. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and find it really helpful to you as you lead your team as we dive into this talk about team building with Lee Hotchkiss. So as leaders in our Next Gen ministry, it's really important that we have some insight into what it takes to build and maintain a healthy dynamic within our teams. So many of us find our ways into leadership without the training that we need to be good leaders. We do a good job at whatever role we've fulfilled, and all of a sudden we're placed in charge of other people. Some of us have been leading student ministry or kids ministry, and now we have responsibility over the whole gamut from birth through high school or even into college, different leaders on our staffs underneath our leadership all of a sudden. And it's even true at the team level where a kids ministry leader may have multiple people underneath them, or a student leader with a few people under them. And so this idea of understanding team building is a key for us to do that, not just with whatever happens to come naturally, or with something that maybe has the wrong starting point that would undermine our ability to lead our teams well. So Lee, I want to spend some time hearing from you and sharing with our listeners who are these leaders, many of whom are in places of leadership where they want to do a great job, but maybe have not been equipped with the right tools, with the right strategies to know how to lead our teams well. We're doing our best, but some of us may be struggling, that we may have some unhealthy dynamics. We may have some challenges that we're facing, and perhaps having a better understanding of how we can build and sustain a team dynamic that is healthy and strong would help us as we lead our ministries and try to do that as effectively as we can. So let's start with maybe a definition of what is team building. When we talk about building a team, this idea of team building, Lee, it's a thing.
Yeah, it's been a thing. Thanks, Chuck, for having me on again.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Team building, I think, is a fantastic way to get at the dynamics in a group. So I got into ministry, and I bumped into all of those problems of things going badly, and seeing people get walked over for the purpose of outcome. And it began to whet my interest in this whole area. And so I came at it and had a passion really for this area, and I've been collecting material for a long time. And God has given me the opportunity to share in both the missions context, as where I kind of cut my teeth on these concepts, and then later in the local church as a pastor and leader, and trying to build teams. Frankly, sometimes in the local church it's harder than being the quote professional overseas. And then the third area that I gleaned from is I had an opportunity to do training and lecture, I guess, to mission leaders, especially in this whole area of team building. And there's some really neat components that can help a local church situation. Yeah.
And so as I've kind of reflected through some of this and been exposed to your work by what I've seen of your work and the books you've written and conversations that we have had, it seems to me a lot of team building where we can get off on the wrong foot, maybe making it more about the outcome than about the people themselves.
Exactly.
And if we're driven so much by goals and mile markers and that pursuit of a win, whatever the win is, we can chew some people up along the way. And if our team is chewed up, we're not going to get those wins.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's some watershed questions going into this that need to be answered. One is, how bad off is the group I'm working with? Is there some real dysfunction in this group, or is it, I just need a little fine tuning?
Yeah.
And so that's one watershed question one needs to ask as a leader. The second is, what are my skills as a facilitator? Do I need to find an expert to bring in, or can I do this myself? And I think that's a question that every leader needs to answer. And we all can't do everything.
So as we look at that first question, that how healthy or unhealthy is my group, is my team?
Yes.
Where do we start in trying to make that sort of assessment as people who are practitioners and again who are in these roles who may not have this knowledge? Where do we start? How do we start that assessment? Do you do that as a group, or do you do that with each individual?
Well, I think you ask the Lord to help you assess. And so this week I was reading in Philippians, read through the book of Philippians, and I was reading in Colossians and Ephesians, and Paul talks a lot about group dynamics in those books, and as well.
He doesn't use those words.
No, but boy, they're important.
But when we look for them, they're there. That's great.
Absolutely. So I want to say that even though we'll talk about a lot of social science stuff, that we need to integrate that with Scripture and always go back to Scripture as an anchor point for what's important. And so the Lord has a lot to say about this area, and so I want to just let that be known first. However, there's a lot to be learned from the social science research, and there's a rich amount of stuff out there. And I've been digging into that for a long time, and love researching it and seeing what's working and what the quote experts are saying.
Well, there are some of us who have kind of a natural or a God-given ability to read the room, who have a high maybe EQ to understand, hey, that something doesn't seem like that person seems like they're struggling, or maybe they're not happy. And so I might have a natural ability to observe that, and then I can engage with that person and try to suss out what's happening and figure. If I don't have that ability, like some people do, there are some tools that you might recommend. What sorts of tools or steps might I take to help me begin to discern where my team is?
Yeah, well, to answer the first part of that question is some people say, read your gut. Listen to your gut. What's your gut telling you about this? And I would spiritualize that and say, ask the Holy Spirit to give you insight and discernment into what's going on with not only the group, but the individuals in the group. And also in myself, Lord, what am I bringing to this? Maybe I'm the problem.
So you mentioned some things like a questionnaire, some things you might do. That could be a practical device to employ. Would you start with conversation? Where would you begin? And as a leader, if I'm just not sure, this is the first time that I'm thinking about this idea of improving my team dynamics, rather than hit and miss things, what would be a strategic approach?
Well, often good to just ask questions. Have a conversation and listen. Throw out some questions and see what you get back. Another way to do that, if you've got a fractured group, a good confidential questionnaire is good. So one of the last places I served as a consultant with a group of elders in a church that was hurting, and they asked me to come in, and so the very first thing was done was a confidential questionnaire. It had 17 questions, and those questions had you could mark it 1 to 5, and on the one side was we are doing poorly and need help. Number 5 was we are doing great and no need for improvement. And so they gave me these confidentially before I went to the group, and I looked over this. The first thing I observed, and they had questions like, the first one was synergy. We are well coordinated and an energized team. We are working well together and accomplishing more than we would as individuals working on our own. So that's a good question to start.
Question.
And so I looked at that and I thought, the first thing I noticed was these answers are all over the place. There are some down at 1 and there are some up at 5. And so I'm saying...
So different team members are answering that inconsistent with one another.
And because it was confidential, no one on the team had awareness of what the other guys were saying. And so this was really valuable for me coming in as a, quote, expert to help take their facilitators, better word, a facilitator to help them work through some of the tension points in that group. And so a good questionnaire can do that. And you can make up your own. You could also get them off the internet. There's all kinds of ways to do this.
So creating or curating a questionnaire that allows you to ask some questions and get some insights in a way that is that's anonymous can be really helpful, because it lets you get people aren't worried about how they answer, right? Being scrutinized for how they answer. It gives them the freedom to be honest in how they feel about how things are going.
Absolutely. And so the more damaged a group is, the more dysfunctional it is, the more important it is to do this kind of an instrument.
Yeah. And so that gives you a good handle on where you're starting.
Yes.
Right. And so you want to assess your team. Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is there a continuum that you would use to kind of rate a team?
Well, yes. And again, the difference opinion, again, with the little story of the elder group, again, they were all over the place. And so they obviously had different opinions about how well this group was functioning. And I zeroed right in on that. I mean, they've got to talk about that. It's not that I have this information on them, but they need to process how come they have these different perspectives and what's behind that in each individual. I mean, that's the stuff of team building.
So that when you find that you have people who are not on the same page, they see things differently. Clearly, I guess I would say clearly I'll ask the question: is that because, or is that an indicator that perhaps I, as a leader, have not set a clear expectation? Is that how much of that is a reflection of me as a leader in the impact that I have on the culture?
Well, that's a good question. I believe that a good team leader has to do that kind of work. Otherwise, it's going to blow up at some point, or people are going to walk away, and you're going to hurt a lot of people along the way. And so we have to ask the Spirit of God to give discernment and insight into what's going on with people. I mean, that's where it's got to start, Chuck. I feel pretty strongly about that. Now, you can go into the literature, and I've got a list in front of me from a book, When to Do. It's by Dyer. Is when should you do team building? And he's got a great list. Things like loss of production or output, increased numbers of complaints, conflicts or hostility, confusion about what we're doing. Just a whole kind of list. You can make up your own list. You don't have to use somebody else's list. And that's, I think, a good place to start as well. And then the objectives. What are we trying to accomplish? And he has, again, Dyer in his list, a whole bunch of things, objectives, and things for improving, helping communication, solving conflict, identifying problems, just a myriad of things. And so a good leader ought to be thinking about those things all the time.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And oftentimes we're so busy in the moment of getting the work done with the urgencies of our ministries. There's a lot on our plates that we may not give credence to the reality that there could be some dynamics at play that are undermining our success or that are causing harm to our people, ultimately to our ministries and our effectiveness for the gospel. So we really need to be tuned in
Absolutely.
To the emotional, mental, relational health of our people.
Absolutely. If you've got dysfunctional people, one, you need to provide for their growth and development. That's an important part of a leader's role, I believe.
Yeah.
And the second of all is don't let them set the agenda.
Yeah.
If you've got a toxic person in the group, don't let them set the agenda for the whole group.
Yes. And that's a good word, right? Because one apple spoils the whole bunch, right? Or the whole barrel. How does that go? I know that you grew up on an apple farm, and so I went to the apple analogy. So yeah, we need to be careful to address those things quickly so we don't let toxicity spread and poison the team, poison the ministry, because that could be really bad.
Absolutely.
So acknowledging that, and for some of us, we may be in places where we are in an environment where our team is in a really bad, unhealthy place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Some of us, it may not seem bad. Maybe we have some struggles here and there, and we just consider it to be normal how things go. Some of us are in great positions where everybody's happy and healthy.
Yeah.
But wherever you are, it's important to keep your
ear to the ground,
finger on the pulse to watch the health of your team and to take proactive, intentional steps to strengthen that team.
Absolutely. one of the things I like to do is to start with what I want the group to look like. And so I wrote, this is in leadership material I developed a long time ago, but 6 characteristics of an effective group.
Okay.
And so let me just walk through those quickly. Number 1 was a climate of trust and support. And I thought that was really important. So I put it down as one of the first things in my team building lecturing that I did. Number 2 was ability to communicate. When communication gets squelched in a group, it may be out of the pressure of time or output. It may be from the fact that you've got so driven for outcome that you have no time or place for anyone's input. And so I think the ability to communicate within the group is really important.
And it may be that as a member of the team, I feel like I've tried to communicate before, and if I try to communicate and I don't feel heard,
absolutely,
I will then squelch my own voice and stop sharing.
And then number 3 in my little list was ownership of goals. People have to buy in to what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And of course, if people can't buy in, they need to probably leave the team and find a different one to be a part of. Number 4 was importance of individuals' contribution. And one of the models we may go to a little later if we have the time really starts with that, is the contribution of the individual. And so when I used to do team building exercises with mission groups overseas, I would often start with that, the contribution of the individual. And if they don't believe that they are making a contribution, they're not going to hang around.
Yeah, if I feel like what I do here isn't seen or valued, doesn't make a difference, doesn't matter.
Absolutely. And that principle,
I'm not going to be bought in.
That principle is true absolutely everywhere in any group. Number 4 in this, or that was number 4, individual's contribution. Number 5 on my little list was does not have leadership that is highly authoritarian. So team building does not work if you've got authoritarian leadership, because the leader has to give away power to individuals to share. And so that's one of the fundamental watershed issues of team building. If you've got authoritarian leadership, don't go down the road of team building. It's not worth it. You're swimming against up the stream, and again, the climate or ethos of that organization is set often by the top leadership. And it's pretty hard to do this kind of stuff if your top leadership is saying, get those numbers up, and we don't care how many people we use. They may not say it like this, but we don't care how many people we use up and spit out. We've got to get those numbers. And so that would be what highly authoritarian leadership. Now, that's effective in a crisis, and there's a place for authoritarian leadership. Do this, do it now, and do it efficiently, and so forth. But if that's the only approach in the organization, then you're going to use up a lot of people.
And the ultimate one of the takeaway messages there is that in a healthy ministry environment, it's not led in a way that's authoritarian in how it's handed down, but it is a team-based strategy and approach where everyone understands a shared mission, a shared vision, a shared purpose, and understands how they as individuals contribute to that. That's a much healthier way to accomplish things.
Exactly. I used to call this participative leadership. So again, does the person is the individual in this organization have a chance to participate in all of that goal setting and decision making and especially the process? Again, team building is about process. It's about managing the process. And then
so we may have a leader who functions in a more authoritative manner that we may not have any control over how that person leads us. We all have control over how we lead the people under us.
Exactly.
So if we are being too heavy-handed, maybe we need to reevaluate loosening our white knuckle grip on those tasks and initiatives and agendas in favor of casting a vision that's compelling enough that everybody latches on.
Exactly. And I may not be in an organization that allows me to do that. So then I have to come back to, does God want me in this organization?
The right place for me?
Or should I be somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
That's a very hard one. And then the last, number 6 on my little list here, was commitment to decisions reached. So if we make a group decision, how committed are the individuals to that? Now, if the decision is passed down from above, up the chain, then often it's harder to get commitment to that decision. It's all on the skill of that leader to get followers, or his ability to use power to get people to do what he wants, or she. But those are all what I looked at as effective characteristics of a effective group.
So you've referenced earlier a model that you have brought that you reference. It's 7 steps to creating and sustaining a healthy team dynamic. And so I wanted to talk through these. So let's go through the 7 steps and unpack a little bit of what this looks like to create and sustain a healthy team dynamic.
Yeah. Let me first just quote who this is from. This is it's called the Team Performance Model, copyrighted back in '87. So it's old, but it's still good. It's really solid. And the authors are Drexler and Siebert.
Okay.
And so just to get that out of the way, the 7 circles they show on their little chart is the first one, number 1, is called orientation. And the question there is, why am I here? And so that's a really important question. Why am I here? And that's why
this would be for everyone on the team.
Absolutely, every member of the team. And if they can't answer that question, they won't stay around.
And part of that is we need to articulate that to them,
yes,
right? Because they're looking to us at the time we make a hire, or we bring someone on, or we join the team.
Exactly.
We need to clearly articulate a clear and compelling purpose for what we're here to do.
Right.
And it's our responsibility as leaders to make sure that each person understands the importance and the scope of their role.
Right. And this is where they need to have some input into that, obviously, what their role is. And that's why I used to start my team building workshops or sessions with a lot of time spent to that. A lot of time I do a 3-day workshop, and we'd spend almost all the first day people telling their story of what do I contribute, what do I believe I can contribute, and then having people give feedback to that, the rest of the team, and say, hey, wow, we believe that's important.
Yeah.
And so that's absolutely key.
And when we talk about ways that we contribute, one way of looking at that might be, what are the tasks that I accomplish on my checklist? The other would be, what are the skill sets and the giftedness that I bring to the team?
Absolutely. And so I used to have a little checklist of people, give people ideas. What's the education I have, and what are my passions, and what am I good at, and what have I done in the past? And you could make up your own list like that. But I used to do that and help groups think through what they're contributing. And the individual has to buy into that. Now, if it's simply dictated above, we see you in this slot, and go do it, and no input, and my heart may be somewhere else. So that's really important. So why am I here? Question, the orientation question. The second one is called trust building. Here the focus changes from the individual to often the team leader or other members on the team. Can I trust you? And how do you build that? Well, you build it through people telling their story. And this is where a leader needs to be able to bare his heart and be transparent. And if he or she can't do that, that trust building phase doesn't happen. And so I think not only do I need to be able to share and believe that the team needs me, but I also need to believe that you're somebody I can trust. And those are the nuts and bolts of team building.
And so it seems like this is not a moment in which we make a statement that wins that trust, but this is a continuing way of walking where people, as they spend time with it, because trust takes time, right? You don't get trust instantly. We have to earn trust. And so we earn it based on allowing people to see how we walk out the things that we say over time, right? And when we show that we are faithful to do what we said we would and value what we said we value, then that investment results in trust over time.
Absolutely. Well, one of the points I used to teach is team building takes time, and it's not a one-time event. Now, a one-time event, bringing in someone to help you learn how to do that as a group can be very, very valuable. But I need to be able to manage little increments of that over time, because it is not just one-time deal.
And so as a leader, it helps me to know the people that I lead.
Absolutely.
To know what their family looks like, to know what their background is, to know what their interests are, to know what their passions are, to know what their struggles are maybe, or what their, what challenges they have, where I may need to come alongside and offer help, and other times I need to release them to run in their strength.
Yeah.
But a lot of that comes from relational investment.
Exactly. And this is another watershed issue. Is this a group issue or is this an individual issue? And so as
If we're having a problem, if we're up against a challenge, is it the group or is it an individual?
Yeah. And so if I'm working as an individual, then I ask the person questions, I listen to the person, and I take time to listen and make sure they feel heard. And it may not be a group issue. It may be more individual. And that's, I believe, a real watershed issue of making that decision.
And this may be one of those things where very few people may actually come out and say, I don't think I can trust you. They may not say that, but so we need to be able to read that as we see them. I kind of sense that maybe he doesn't trust me, and maybe I need to do some work there to earn his trust.
Absolutely.
Because the response would be fear or resistance if that trust is not there.
Yeah, well, I've been, and most of us have probably been around leaders that act like they're listening and then go out and do something totally different, or make a promise that they don't keep.
Yeah.
You know, these are trust issues, and or spill the beans and share something that's confidential, and use it for their whatever sermon,
some sort of advancement of gain,
sermon illustration. Okay, number 3 then in this model of the stages of team building. So first was orientation, the second was trust building, the third is goal clarification. So this is where if the group has the power to set those goals, they may not in your organization. They may be brought down from above. And so goal clarification is, what are we doing? You know, what is the objective? And so can I get behind that? Do I really believe that my contribution is going to help bring that goal about? And so, and then the number 4.
We've talked about this on this podcast before, about the idea that we as leaders, part of what we need to do is we need to cast vision. We need to be leaders who lead with purpose and passion. Because whatever you have is contagious, is the way I like to say it, right? So if you lack vision, your people will lack vision. If you are passionate about what it is we're here to do, and you can articulate a clear and compelling purpose, that will likewise fuel your team in a positive way. So part of this could come back to us is in clarifying that. I like that it's goal clarification.
Yes.
We know there's a goal, but sometimes that goal is fuzzy or foggy or out of focus altogether. Sometimes it's on a different wall that we're not even looking at. We need to be leaders who come back to clarifying our purpose, because people don't join teams necessarily just to do work. They join teams to accomplish a purpose.
Yes.
Especially in a ministry setting, we're driven by a passion for kingdom results, which are not always measurable in the same kind of terms that it would be for selling a product somewhere. But keeping that sense of purpose in front of our people is a really important thing.
Absolutely. And I guess team building is based around the fact that I have the opportunity to participate, not again dictate, but participate
to help shape that.
Exactly. And
vision.
that's really a question of culture in the organization.
And the goal there would be that everyone on the team understands and can articulate the same idea of what is our purpose and our mission and our vision.
Exactly.
And then that they see how they own their part of it, that it's owned by them, not pressed into them or forced upon them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of team building built around how do you do that in an organization. And, you do all kinds of gimmicks and things and as focus groups and, and so forth. But sometimes people see right through it and they say, the decision's already been made on this and they're just trying to get me on board. So that may sound a little cynical, but often that dynamic is there and it needs to be kind of rooted out and expressed.
But a strong team welcomes input, it welcomes participation, and part of that is welcoming questions that help clarify, right? Because a lot of the questions that may come to us would be from someone who maybe doesn't fully grasp what the goal was, or how it was intended to be presented.
Well, the history of that and how we got to this point and so forth. That's an important part. If you got new people coming, all of a sudden, why do we do this around here? they need to be brought onto that. And so we need to be able to give away power without allowing somebody to dictate that, an outsider to come in and take charge.
And these may be things that we need. So if you're a leader who is taking a role at a new church and you've been there for a few weeks or a few months, you're walking into an established dynamic.
Yes.
And you're trying to figure out where you fit. How much influence do you have? How much autonomy do you have? What input do you have on those goals? Some of those may be long-standing that we need to understand what our senior leadership is casting for vision.
Exactly.
And join them in that. And there, for us as leaders in that kind of mid-level, if we're not on board with the overall mission of the church, that's where we need to question if it's the right place for us.
Yes, that kind of discussion needs to be had at the hiring process
early on
when I get hired.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Number 4 is decision making, and so you say this is which way do we go?
Yes, that's and so part of team building is who makes the decisions, how are they made, which way do we go. And that now we're beginning to get into the management stuff of is this the senior leadership going to make all those decisions of my little group? Maybe I'm the youth pastor and I want to make the decisions of what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
And whether we do a water skiing trip or a snow skiing trip, I mean, who makes that decision? And what is my role then in the carrying out of that? And so good team building allows some input into what kind of activities we do, how we go about it, and so forth. And so when I take a group through decision making, I try and get it out on the table and to say, okay, what kinds of decisions are made by the group and what kinds of decisions are made by leadership? And so, and at various levels. Yeah. So that's an important part of important place to have discussion and open interaction.
So as leaders, we may have people on our teams who are wondering about the why or what's behind the decisions that we may make. Because as leaders, we do have to make decisions sometimes.
Exactly.
And sometimes not everyone agrees, and someone has to be the tiebreaker, or someone has to be the heavy, or the person who takes responsibility for a decision that needs to be made. That's on us as leaders. It can help if we can explain the reasoning behind the decision,
exactly,
rather than just handing it down.
And it comes back to communication, good open communication about both the ideas and I call it the head and the heart. Yeah. How do I feel about this as well as what do I think about it?
Yeah.
And so I think continuing to clarify the decision-making process is an ongoing issue that a leader needs to attend to.
So we move over here in the construct. From those first 3 or 4 things are on the creating team building structure. Yep. The next set here are on sustaining.
Yes. So now we're into more of the management stuff. So the implementation, or how do we do this? And again, this is a leader has to help massage that through to again get the person on board and help them see how their what they bring contributes to the whole and so forth, and so leadership gets complicated. Again, if we don't navigate this step well, then people often begin to bail out. There's conflict often comes out of this, of how things are implemented, and the chart goes into quite a bit of detail on what happens when this is unresolved and so forth. But I'm just trying to hit the high points here. And then number 6 in their model is high performance. Wow, this is great. This is fantastic. God's blessing this ministry, to use more spiritual language. And if it's unresolved, then people tend to go back to the front side of this model, and team building can be a help. And how come it's not going well? And begin to open up the conversation about that. Maybe we're trying to do the wrong things. Maybe we're being too pressured to get the numbers or to be successful. And then the last one, number 7 on this little chart, is renewal. Why continue? And so do I sign up again for another year of this, or do I bail out? Do I look for an exit point? And again, this has to do with how well all these first 6 have been managed.
It seems to me that this applies really well to a staff team, people who are on our staff in the church. We're in the office together, day-to-day interaction. But there's also elements of this that apply over to the volunteers that we lead, because our volunteers likewise need to be oriented. We need to build trust with them. They need to understand how we make decisions. Now, a volunteer may not have as much input into what we decide to do, but certainly we would benefit from knowing that those volunteers are in a place where they trust the leadership, where they have a voice that they feel is heard, where they're known as people, valued, and understanding the impact that they have, so that when they come back up to be renewed as a volunteer, to come back to the kids program or to come back to the student ministry for another year, they see the value in their contribution, and they're entering in not to fill an obligation, but to serve in a clear and compelling mission.
Absolutely. And so really what we've talked about here is this merging of leadership with group dynamics. That's the key idea, I think.
So if we're in a place where we're walking in and we feel that this team needs some help, what would you recommend we do first? We mentioned the idea of a survey might be a good thing, an anonymous survey to get some information. Once we have that, we don't know who said what. How might we come back to a team and say, we need to work together? What are some of the benefits or some of the payoffs that we get? Team building works best when what?
Well, I think one, again, back in the how to do this, one way to do that would be to have a retreat where you begin to take the time to unwind and have some fun.
Step away from the day-to-day.
Exactly. And if you have the freedom to do that, that's a very, very good way. So again, the organization I worked for would fly me all over the world to do these 3-day workshops, or we called them team building workshops. And so that 3 days I found was really a good model to break down some of the defensiveness. I had places where people were so resistant to anything team building. They say, man, I'll resign before we'll go through this, trash.
They have pictures of doing a trust fall where somebody closes their eyes and everybody has to catch them when they fall backwards.
Exactly.
This is not...
I never have done that sort of thing. So anyway, I look at the dynamics and how people are interacting within those dynamics is where I put and making sure that's biblical. Then go right back to Scripture and say, okay, what does the Bible have to say about this? And so a simple thing might be to begin to have a devotional with your group and to begin to take one little subject and begin to introduce it, get it out on the table for people are talking about it and asking them, people, what do you think about this? How do you feel about it? And do you feel a part? And to begin, if it's a pretty good team, people will be quite willing to do that. If it's a dysfunctional team, they're going to say, oh, I'm protecting myself. There's no way. I got my arms folded here and I'm not going to get sucked into saying something that I'll regret later.
Yeah. A good place to start. Well, Lee, thank you for coming on again and for sharing these great insights about team building and how we can read our team and pour into our team to grow that healthy team structure. So I so appreciate having you on, and thank you for sharing.
Great. It's been a privilege to be here.
Listeners, you can find out more from Lee on his website, leehotchkiss.com, LeeHotchkiss.com. You can find some of Lee's books there, including a book on relational peace. That's a fantastic read that could help you build relationship with your team. You can find that on Lee's website, and maybe we can link that website in our show notes if you're on the page. Whatever you're doing as a leader, make sure you're intentional. Lean in with your team. Assess them, not just the work they're doing, but the state of their hearts and minds, their emotional condition, and invest in them as people first. When we know who they are and they know who we are, we can build that environment of trust and respect that pays off with increased influence. But it all begins with building strong relationships with the people that we lead, putting people over process. Thank you for listening. We'll see you back again soon for another episode of the Etch Next Gen Ministry Podcast. This episode of the Etch Next Gen Ministry podcast was brought to you by our amazing team. Executive producer, Angie Elkins. Producer, Nikki Ogden. And recorded in the Lifeway podcast studio in Brentwood, Tennessee, with sound engineer Donnie Gordon. Artwork by Cameron Wilson. And I'm your host, Chuck Peters. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Etch.